Every person wakes up with the same number of hours, rich or poor, old or young. It doesn't matter if you're just getting started or running an empire, each of us gets 24. What makes the difference is not how much time we have, but how we use it. Successful people aren't born with more time, they simply refuse to waste it. They wake up with intention. When the alarm rings, they don't roll over. They rise with purpose, not because they feel like it, but because they know the value of a single hour. They don't treat the morning as a time to drift. They treat it as a time to anchor. First hour sets the tone for the rest of the day. Most people lose it to distractions, to indecision, to comfort. But the successful, they've already decided the night before what that morning will look like. No guesswork. No scrolling through phones. They wake up already knowing what they must do. They start their day by getting ahead. Mentally, emotionally, physically. They take time to read, to think, to review their goals. They feed the mind before the world starts making demands. While most are still reacting, they're already creating. You feel it when you've used your morning well. You walk differently. You speak with clarity. You look people in the eye, not because of ego, but because of alignment. You know where you're going. Now, how do they structure their time? They don't fill their day with random tasks. They put the most important things first. They know what moves the needle. They don't just stay busy, they stay productive. There's a big difference. Busy people are exhausted but have nothing to show for it. Productive people move forward, even if quietly. They say no more than they say yes. Why? Because every yes is a trade-off. 1 hour spent on something unimportant is an hour stolen from what matters most. They plan ahead, but they adjust as needed. Life throws things at all of us. The difference is they don't let interruptions destroy the mission. They recalibrate. They stay on target, even if they have to take a different road. Flexibility is not weakness. It's strength under control. You can't control every moment, but you can control how you respond to every moment. One thing they never do, complain about not having enough time. That's the language of people who never took responsibility. Time is not the enemy, wasted time is. And waste doesn't always look like laziness. Sometimes it looks like being busy with the wrong things. That's why awareness matters. If you don't know where your time is going, how will you change it? You have to measure your life in hours, not years. If you waste 1 hour every day, that's over 15 days in a year. Think about that. 15 days of pure opportunity, lost not because of failure, but because of neglect. 1 hour doesn't seem like much when you waste it, but when you use it well, it changes your entire future. Successful people treat time like currency. They invest it. They don't just spend it. They make time for thinking, for strategizing, for learning. Every day they build, even when it's boring, even when it's slow, because they understand consistency beats bursts of motivation. They don't wait for energy. They bring energy to the task. They act their way into feeling, not the other way around. They guard their time like it's gold, because to them it is. They won't let anyone interrupt what matters most, not because they're rude, but because they're focused. They schedule downtime too. Not everything is work, but when they rest fully. They don't mix work and rest, they commit fully to each. That's why they recover fast. That's why they don't burn out. They've learned how to work hard without losing themselves. And when they face resistance, they don't fold. Resistance is not a sign to stop. It's a sign you're doing something worthwhile. They face discomfort head on because they know breakthroughs are buried in discomfort. You want progress? Then expect resistance. You can't improve your life and stay comfortable at the same time. They've learned to get up and push, even when it's tough. They use their time to grow, not just to get by. Growth doesn't happen by accident. It's scheduled. It's planned. It's deliberate. They make time to reflect. They look back and ask what worked, what didn't. What do I need to change? That's how they don't repeat the same mistakes. They build off each day like it's a foundation. Each week is not just a cycle, it's a ladder. They don't drift through their day, they direct it. They don't chase distractions, they create momentum. That's how you feel progress, not in giant wins, but in small wins stacked daily. 10 minutes reading, 15 minutes planning. One hard task completed. These stack up. Day by day, they move you forward. Unsuccessful people wait for perfect conditions, but successful people move even when it's messy, even when they're tired, even when the world isn't clapping. They understand time is not about doing more, it's about doing what matters most. That's why they don't fill every hour with noise. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is sit and think, not scroll, not escape, but face your own thoughts. They spend time with themselves, to process, to clarify, to recharge. Because clarity is a time saver. When you know what you want, you move faster. You waste less. They don't let their feelings run their calendar. They set the plan and show up whether they feel like it or not. That's self-respect. That's how you build self-trust. Every time you say you'll do something and follow through, you strengthen your identity. You become someone who follows through. That's worth more than motivation. That's what gives you real confidence. Not hype, not praise, but proof. Your actions prove it. They also don't compare their time with others. Comparison is a distraction. You don't need their routine. You need a routine that fits your mission. They focus on what they can control. They don't waste a minute wishing they had someone else's life. They use their minutes to build the life they want. Quietly, daily, they keep showing up. They eliminate time leaks. No endless scrolling. No mindless decisions. No emotional reactions that drain hours. They build systems, habits, routines, not because it's trendy, but because it's smart. It frees their mind. When your time is organized, your mind is free to think, to create, to act. Structure is freedom when it's built around your values. And they take ownership of their time. If they waste it, they don't blame others. They adjust. They don't play victim to the clock. They become master of their hours. They don't live in regret. They live in alignment. They make peace with the past and use the present to shape the future. Not later, not tomorrow, but now. They understand this. How you use your hours determines the kind of life you get to live. It's not about luck. It's not about background. It's about decisions. Small, daily, repeated. That's how change happens. That's how results show up. You build momentum one decision at a time, and every single day gives you the chance to either delay your future or build it. Successful people don't wait to feel ready. They begin, then figure it out. They take action, then adjust. They move before they're fully confident because they know confidence comes from action, not before it. They don't waste time trying to perfect the plan. They build the plan by doing, by failing, by learning. That's how they grow. That's how they evolve. They don't try to find time, they make it. By cutting what doesn't matter. By simplifying their commitments. By being honest about what's stealing their attention. If you can't tell yourself the truth about where your time is going, you can't fix it. But the moment you do, you start gaining control. You don't need to do 100 things. You need to do the right things consistently. That's what separates average from great. Not more effort, not more hours, but smarter choices, clearer focus, better use of the time already in your hands. You can't get more hours, but you can get more out of each hour. That's the secret. Not time management, but life alignment. Knowing who you are, knowing what matters, and putting your energy into those things again and again until the results are undeniable. They don't allow time to slip through unnoticed. Every hour speaks. Every minute has a voice. Either it's moving them toward their goals or pulling them away. They listen closely. They pay attention. They make decisions not based on impulse, but based on vision. Because a day without direction becomes a day lost in distraction. And they refuse to lose days. When you talk to people who've built something real, whether it's a business, a career, a healthy body, or a strong mind, you'll notice something. They all treat their time as sacred. You won't find them drifting through days, waiting for motivation to strike. They're up. They're focused. They're making decisions when others are delaying. Because they know momentum doesn't come from inspiration, it comes from action. Most people don't run out of time, they waste it pretending they have more. The successful understand the value of now. They don't just talk about what they're going to do, they start. Even when it's not perfect, even when they don't have all the answers. They know the answers come later. Movement creates clarity. Waiting just feeds doubt. They build routines that protect their time. Morning routines, evening shutdowns, deep work blocks. not because they want to look productive, but because they've seen the power of structure. It's not about being strict, it's about creating room for freedom. When you know what matters, you say no with confidence. No to distractions. No to unnecessary tasks. No to people who drain your energy. That's how they stay sharp. They protect their peak hours. Everyone has windows in the day when their energy is highest. That's when the important work gets done. They don't give those hours away. They don't spend that time on meaningless meetings or errands. They build, they create, they think, they execute. Because they understand, quality work done during high energy periods is 10 times more powerful than busy work stretched over an entire day. Their relationship with time is intentional. Every hour is a tool, a resource, a chance to move one step forward. They don't chase the illusion of balance where everything is equal. They seek alignment where their time matches their values. Some days are all work, some days are for rest, but every day serves the bigger vision. That's what keeps them centered. They don't multitask, they single focus. When it's time to work, they go deep. No notifications, no distractions, just one task, fully engaged. That's how real progress happens, not by doing more, but by doing one thing well. Multitasking creates the illusion of movement, but focused work creates results. They know the difference. They don't let fear steal their time either. Fear shows up when you're about to grow. It whispers reasons to delay, to doubt, to wait for the right time. But the successful don't negotiate with fear. They recognize it, then they act anyway. Because fear feeds on delay. But action cuts it down. They don't need to feel fearless. They just need to move. They also schedule reflection, not just action, because action without reflection becomes blind effort. They take time each week to review what moved them forward, what slowed them down, what needs to change. That awareness saves them years of wasted motion. 1 hour of honest reflection can redirect 1,000 wasted hours. And they understand that not everything urgent is important. They've learned to separate the noise from the signal. Urgency screams for attention. Importance whispers. Most people chase what's loud, but the wise listen to what matters. They pause. They choose. They don't let pressure from the outside override priorities on the inside. They also create space. Space to think, space to breathe, space to decide. You can't think clearly if your mind is constantly racing. They turn off the noise. They put the phone away. They get quiet. Because in that quiet, you hear what truly matters. You remember what you're building. You reconnect with your mission. They spend time learning, not just consuming, but applying. Reading a book is good, but applying what you learned is better. Watching a video is fine, but changing your habits after watching it, that's where the power is. The successful don't just learn for the sake of learning, they use what they learn to improve the way they live. They make time to build relationships that support their mission. Not gossip, not drama, real relationships, people who challenge them, encourage them, inspire them. Because who you spend time with shapes your future. A powerful conversation can shift your direction. A toxic one can steal your focus. They choose carefully. They also rest with intention. They don't use exhaustion as a badge of honor. They rest to recover. They sleep to sharpen. Because a tired mind makes poor decisions. They take breaks not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Burnout isn't a requirement for success. Clarity, energy, and consistency are. Rest fuels all three. They don't chase time, they master it. They decide ahead of time what matters, then they align their energy with those decisions. Every task has a reason. Every minute has a purpose. That doesn't mean they never relax. It means they relax by design, not by default. There's a difference between taking a break and escaping from responsibility. They take care of their body because it's the vehicle that carries them through time. They move daily. They eat with intention. They hydrate. Not because it's trendy, but because they understand energy is earned. Clarity is built. When your body is strong, your mind works better. When your health is aligned, your choices improve. They also practice gratitude not in theory, but in practice. They take a few minutes to recognize progress, to acknowledge growth, to be present, because when you appreciate where you are, you gain the power to move forward without frustration. Gratitude grounds you. It makes you see time not as a burden but as a gift. They don't wait for external pressure to act. They set internal standards. They raise the bar even when no one is watching. That's where the real game is played. When no one's clapping, no one's looking, no one's asking, do you still show up? Do you still give your best? They do, because their time is guided by discipline, not applause. They constantly eliminate what no longer serves them. That includes tasks, habits, and sometimes people. They're not harsh, they're clear. If something's stealing time without giving value, it goes. They declutter their schedule the same way you declutter a room. They make room for what matters. That's how you feel peace in a full life. They don't chase trends. They focus on principles. Trends come and go, but principles, discipline, focus, ownership, patience, these stay. These guide how they use time, no matter what the world around them is doing. They don't get distracted by what's popular. They stay committed to what's right for them. And finally, they never underestimate what can be done in a single hour. 1 hour of deep focus can change your direction. 1 hour of honest planning can save you weeks of chaos. 1 hour of meaningful action can bring results others spend days chasing. They see the power in the present. They use it because they know how you use 1 hour is how you'll use a day, and how you use a day becomes how you live your life. They also realize that nobody is going to hand them more time. Nobody's coming to give them permission. They don't wait for perfect conditions or better circumstances. They take what they have today and make the most of it. While others are wishing, they're working. While others are thinking about starting, they're already halfway done. That gap between intention and action, they close it fast. They don't fill their schedule with things just to feel busy. They don't measure progress by how full their calendar looks. They look at outcomes. They ask, did this move me forward? Did this get me closer to the result I want? They value clear progress over the illusion of productivity. They'd rather complete one meaningful task than juggle 10 that go nowhere. They also know how to start over. They don't waste time stuck in regret or replaying past mistakes. If yesterday was wasted, they don't throw away today. They learn, they adjust, they reset. Time doesn't stop for guilt. It rewards those who respond. Every day is a fresh chance, and they treat it like one. You won't find them dragging through the morning. They own it. They wake up with purpose. Not because it's easy, but because they've trained themselves. And over time, it becomes natural. Their body and mind know what's expected. That kind of consistency doesn't happen by accident. It's built, one disciplined morning at a time. They stay mindful of what drains them, not just in work, but emotionally. They don't hold on to conversations that go in circles. They don't stay in environments that rob them of energy, because they know time isn't just hours, it's also energy. If something steals your energy, it's stealing your time too. They guard their inputs, what they read, what they watch, who they listen to. They know that what enters your mind eventually shapes your actions. They feed their mind with strength, truth, clarity. They avoid gossip, outrage, and noise, not because they're pretending the world is perfect, but because they're protecting their ability to think clearly. They also simplify. They don't overcomplicate their days with endless decisions. They automate what doesn't matter. They streamline routines. They make the essentials automatic so they can focus on the meaningful. They've learned that simplicity creates room for power. The more clutter you remove from your schedule, the more focus you gain. They embrace discomfort. Not just tolerate it, embrace it. They see discomfort as the cost of growth, the price you pay for strength. If a task feels difficult, they lean in. They know the first few minutes of resistance are the hardest. But once you start, momentum begins to build, and with it comes confidence. That's how they grow, hour by hour. They don't overanalyze every move. They act. Then they learn. They understand that waiting for the perfect plan often becomes an excuse to delay. They don't aim for perfect, they aim for progress. If they make a mistake, they adjust. But they never let fear of making a wrong move stop them from moving. They live by standards, not moods. If they only worked when they felt like it, they'd fall behind. Instead, they decide what needs to be done. Then they do it regardless of emotion. Discipline carries them through the dips, and that's how their results stay consistent even when life gets unpredictable. They know exactly where their time is going, they track it, they review it, they make sure it matches their goals. If their calendar and their vision don't align, they fix it. They don't just hope to get better, they make sure their actions match their intentions. Every appointment, every task, every hour, it all has a reason behind it. They also invest time in thinking long-term. They zoom out. They ask, where am I headed? What do I want a year from now? 5 years from now? Because long-term thinking changes how you use short-term time. It stops you from chasing quick hits and keeps you focused on building something that lasts. That's how they move with direction, not just speed. They aren't afraid of boredom. In fact, they welcome it. They know mastery comes from repetition. Growth comes from doing the work even when it isn't exciting. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing daily. And over time, that consistent effort compounds into results most people never see. They use routines not as a cage, but as a launch pad. A good routine removes friction. You don't have to think about every move, you just execute. That kind of flow state creates space for your best work. They don't spend their day deciding, they spend it doing, because the decisions were already made. They focus on what they can control. That's a big one. They don't waste time complaining about things outside their power. They direct their energy toward what they can change. And when they do that, they regain control over their time, their progress, and their peace of mind. They also revisit their goals regularly, not just once a year. They look at them weekly, sometimes daily, not because they're obsessed, but because they want to stay aligned. A goal out of sight is a goal out of mind. And they know drifting happens when direction is forgotten, so they stay connected to their purpose. They don't underestimate the value of a small win. One completed task, one tough conversation, one moment of discipline, it all adds up. They track the little victories because they know those are the ones that build momentum. Waiting for big success is a mistake. Creating small wins every day is a strategy. They don't make excuses about time. They don't say, I'm too busy. They say, it's not a priority. That shift changes everything because it forces honesty. It reminds them that how they spend their time is a reflection of what they truly value. And if the way they use time doesn't reflect their goals, they change their use of time, not their goals. They stop giving energy to things that are already done. Regret doesn't get a spot on their schedule. They extract the lesson, then move on. Energy stuck in the past cannot build a better future. They pour that energy into today, into what can still be shaped. That's how they keep growing. They say no often, not because they're rude, but because they're focused. Every yes is a no to something else, and they want to make sure their yes is going toward what matters most. Time is limited, and the more you guard it, the more powerful your life becomes. They use their evenings to reset. They don't carry the noise of the day into the night. They review, they plan, they clear the clutter mentally. That way, when they sleep, they rest deeply. And when they wake up, they're not reacting, they're already on course. That small habit gives them a huge edge. They don't try to manage time, they manage themselves. Time doesn't change. What changes is how they show up. They change their habits, their mindset, their systems, and through those changes, they change their outcomes. That's how progress becomes predictable. They use pressure as fuel. When the day feels tight, they don't crumble, they sharpen. When deadlines press in, they rise up. Pressure makes most people panic. But for those who've trained, pressure becomes clarity. It shows them what truly matters and forces action without delay. They remember that this life is limited. That realization doesn't make them anxious, it makes them focused. When you understand that time is not promised, you stop wasting it. You stop numbing yourself with mindless habits. You stop waiting for next week. You get serious about today. And through all of this, they build a life they can be proud of. Not just because they had goals, but because they lived aligned with them every day. Not just because they wanted success, but because they made time for what matters consistently, intentionally, and without apology. They also make room for reflection. Not just checking things off a list, but sitting quietly for a few moments to ask honest questions. Did I act with integrity today? Did I waste time on things that don't serve me? Did I grow even if just a little? These moments of quiet self-checking give them direction. Because when you reflect, you learn. And when you learn, you move better tomorrow. They surround themselves with people who value time. They don't keep company with time wasters, excuse makers, or comfort seekers. The people around them don't make them slower, they sharpen them. If you're always around people who drift, you'll drift too. But if you're with those who take action, stay disciplined, and keep growing, you will rise with them. That's not luck. That's intention. They protect their mornings like their life depends on it, because it does. The first hour sets the tone for the rest of the day. They don't start by scrolling, reacting, or catching up. They start by deciding what they want from the day and locking in on it. That early focus sets off a chain reaction. And it's not because they were born with it. It's because they made it a rule, a personal standard, and they stick to it. They also plan their breaks, not as escapes, but as refuels. They don't run themselves into the ground because they know rest is part of the system. But when they rest, they really rest. They unplug, they breathe, they slow down on purpose. Not with guilt, not with distraction, just enough to come back stronger. That's not laziness, that's long-term thinking. They get very clear about what they don't want in their life, not just what they want to gain, but what they refuse to tolerate. They draw the line. They say no to confusion, chaos, and clutter. They say no to patterns that keep them small. And once they decide something doesn't belong in their life anymore, they remove it fully and permanently. They build their lives on non-negotiables, not rules from others, but promises they make to themselves. Things like, I don't skip workouts, or I don't waste time on gossip, or I finish what I start. These aren't goals, they're standards. And when life gets noisy, they fall back on these standards. They don't need motivation every day because they've built identity. That's what carries them forward. They understand that every minute spent complaining is a minute stolen from creating. They may acknowledge problems, but they don't sit in them. They look for the next step, the way forward. That habit of looking for a solution becomes instinct, and it saves them countless hours that others waste stuck in negativity. They also do things they don't feel like doing. Not once in a while, but constantly. They understand that if they only take action when the mood strikes, they'll never build anything lasting. Discipline gives them a strength most never tap into. And once they realize they can act without waiting for the right feeling, they become dangerous in the best way. They simplify choices that don't matter. You won't see them overthinking what to wear, what to eat, or where to start. They eliminate those little friction points by having systems in place. That mental space gets saved for things that actually move the needle. Simplicity is their secret weapon. They stay grounded in gratitude, not the fluffy kind, but the powerful, focused kind. They wake up aware that this life is a gift, and that reminder pushes them to treat each day with care. When you're grateful for the time you have,
Everyone, Daily Key Motivation 2025. Today speak rich or poor, old or young. It doesn't matter if you're getting started or running an empire. Each of use get 24. What make it different is not how much time we have but how we use it. Successful people are you born with more time, they are simply refuse to waste it in it. They are wake up with internation when the surrounding they don't rule over. They reach with purpose, not because they feel like it, but because they are now it value of a single heart. They don't treat the morning as a time to drift. They treat it as a time to anchor. Fast hours set the tone for the rest of the day. Most people lose it to decisions, to indecision, to comfort, but the successful they are already decide the night before we what that morning will look like. Number no goes work.